Test. Greetings, fellow KSPers. Welcome to Beginner's Guide to Customizing KSP. I'm your host, CW. In these streams, I'm going to show you exactly how to change parts, add parts, and of course, duplicate parts. All in a step-by-step guide, one step at a time, starting right from the beginning. So, first of all, what software do you need? The answer is nothing that doesn't already come on your PC. You don't need any special software. All you need is the default text editor or your favorite text editor if you already have one. Don't recommend using something like OpenOffice or Microsoft Word, as it's quite a big program that's kind of designed for doing things that basically you wouldn't want in a standard text file. Plus also, applications like Microsoft Word do have a general tendency to do things of their own accord that you might not want. I recommend using Notepad. So, where do we begin? First of all, let's take a look at the KSP directory itself. Let's get rid of that. No, that's not getting rid of it. Might help if I right-clicked on it. Okay, this is one of my games directories. It contains all my KSPs. Directory there for mods, and then various KSP installs. Now, your directory will be in a completely different location than mine. Not sure about oh, my mind's gone blank. If you download directly from KSP itself, I believe it gets installed to program files somewhere. Well, there's a simple way of finding out. If we take your KSP icon, move that one over there, and under Windows this is, right click on it and go to Properties. Right, the target here tells you where it is. So for me, again, Drive F, folder called Games, and this icon is KSP 0.90 modded. So that's where your KSP will be installed. Linux users, there are a wide variety of flavors out there that may do things in a different way. If you're using Linux, you'll know how to get to that properties. We'll go and shove this back where it belongs. So, most people, when they're starting off, will just have the one KSP install, which is fine. However, the best tip I can give you is if you're going to be modifying it, then there's a very good chance you're going to break the game. Now, this isn't fun. Been there, done that. What I recommend doing is making a copy of it. How do you do that? I told you, we're starting right from the beginning here. So we're going to take 0.90 unmodded. Right, basically, this is just as it comes out of the packet. So we're just going to right click on the directory, go copy, and right click in blank space and go paste. And off she chunners. Now yours may well take less time than this. Don't forget I'm streaming and recording the stream at the same time. So as you can see, all these different files are going past here. Most of you will probably have no clue what on earth they are. Don't worry about it. I'll explain as I'm going through. I did check I had plenty of storage space on drive F, didn't I? And done. Okay, so under Windows, it'll come up KSP 0.90 unmodded copy. It'll automatically put copy at the end of it. Well, we don't like that. So I'm going to put it how to mod. There you go. You've now got your own KSP install, right, for the how to mod series. So as long as you stick within this install, anything that you do here will not affect your game in your unmodded KSP. So we're going to go into it, and again you can see here you've got your settings. Because you've already set KSP up in your unmodded directory, your settings are copied across and it will be exactly the same. Even your saved games will be exactly the same. So we're going to create an icon for this. Again, doing this under Windows, Linux users should already know how to do this. So we're just going to left click and hold, drag over to the desktop, and then we're going to hold Shift and Control at the same time and release. And hey presto, KSP.exe shortcut. And you know, we're going to give it a logical name here. How to. I can't hear you. How to modify. Yes, I'm going to call it how to mod. Oops. Make that a capital. And of course, you can check the properties. Of course, it points to the how to mod directory. Wonderful. Right. Next step. As you can see, there are various directories and files. These yellow ones are directories. These ones are files. Settings CFG. The CFG part of it means config. It goes back to the good old days of file extensions that only have 3 letters. Again, this is for Windows. Linux users, I think the file names are pretty much the same, although Linux doesn't actually use file extensions. But still, we're mainly dealing with Windows users here. So, inside this CFG file, yours will most likely not be associated with an application. So when you click on it, it won't come up like mine will. Right. What yours will come up with, I go with, it will tell you that it's not associated. Then just click on select a program, which I believe is the bottom option off the top of my head, and then it'll come up with a list like this. If you click that arrow, so it's now pointing up, you'll see a list of all the applications on your PC. Well, not all of them. In our case, for some reason, it's associated with WordPad. For some reason. And why did I do it that way? Oh yes. So we are going to associate it with Notepad, with WordPad rather than Notepad. So just click on WordPad, click OK. And hey presto, it fetches it up. Now, most people will not want to change anything in here, because everything in here is all done through the settings menu within the game itself. However, bringing your attention to those two configs, which is conic patch draw mode and conic patch limit. Right, basically they are settings, so that's the setting name, right, and then equals, just like maths, and then 0, which is a value. Most of the stuff within KSP is the exact same format. So it's a config name, equals, and a value. Now, if you don't know what the conics patch does, do a search on the forums. You might find, once you're flying around basically interplanetary, that you might wish to change your conics draw mode and increase your conics draw limit. Sorry, conic patch draw mode. All the information for the conics patches can be found on the forums. Just go and do a search. So let's take a tour around the KSP directory itself. Ships. This isn't the ships that you're thinking of. These are the ships that come with KSP. They are the stock ships. Stock craft files, strangely enough. There we go. That's the window that we want. I haven't associated the craft files, so we'll do it now. We're going to select a program from a list of installed programs, and then we're going to select WordPad. Always use the selected file, selected program to open, and there voila, it's a text file. All of the configs within KSP are all standard text files that are readable. They're not actually quite as daunting as you think. So let's take a look. Ship equals. Same syntax that we've seen before. Ship equals. So ship is a config value, equals, and that's the value itself. Version, that's basically, as it sounds, the version of the game. So 0.9.0. Description, well, that's where you, when you save the ship, you put a description in, and that's where it saves it. So you can go and remodify that without having to load your ship. Type, SPH. You've got two options there, and they're both in capitals. SPH is the space plane hangar, and the other one is the VAB, vehicle assembly building. Size. Now you don't want to play with that. That is basically the size of the ship itself in basically a three-dimensional box. Now what follows gets very, very complicated, so we're going to leave that there. But you get the idea for what the configs are. We're going to come out of the ships and come all the way back. The saves directory. Strangely enough, go to scenarios as well. That gives you your scenarios within the game. Training. Yep, they're all the training things that you can load. Name them. Let's go back again. Resources. We're going to come back to resources. At the moment, it's empty. Resources and parts directory, we're going to come back to. Launcher data. That's basically for the launcher screen that checks your KSP is up to date, downloads a new one if necessary. We're going to leave that alone. Right. KSP underscore data, that's basically what I would call temporary data for the game itself. Again, I'm going to leave that one alone. Internals is empty. Just like with ships, parts and resources, right, those three are a duplicate directory. They're going back to the old days of KSP, like pre 2.3.5. So for the moment, we're going to leave them as they are, completely empty, or at least they should be completely empty. Game data. This is where the fun happens. Inside this directory, in a standard install, you will just have two directories in here. One called Squad, and the other one called NASA Mission. Now originally, the directory called Squad was always there going back to 0.22 and before. Now the NASA Mission was what was introduced in, I think it was 0.23. With all the grappling hooks, some new engines, etc, etc. Let's leave that there and go into the Squad directory. Plenty of stuff in here. Agencies, contracts, experiment, flags, FX, part list, parts, props, resources. Oh wait, another resources directory, another parts directory. Yep. Sounds, spaces, SPP, and strategies. Most of that is gonna be difficult to explain, so for beginners, leave most of it alone. Let's take a look at the flags directory to begin with. Something nice and simple. You know all the flags that were introduced in 0.23, I think it was? The same with the NASA mission. This is where they are all kept. They're standard PNG files. So any of these can be edited with basically any image manipulation program, whether it's GIMP, PaintShop Pro, Photoshop, whatever you're using, it can modify them. So if you wanted to create your own, for example, that one, you can copy that, right click, copy, go down to the bottom, right click, paste. And there you go, there's your copy. And give it a reasonable name. How to mod. And there you go. You've just created your own flag. Now, of course, you need to put your own design on it. But if you know how to do it, go right ahead. Let's come out of the flags directory. The one that we are interested in is parts. This is where all the parts are for your rockets and planes. Each one of these, it roughly equates to the categories that you have within KSP itself. I say roughly. Squad needs to do a little bit of housekeeping on this, but what can we say? So let's take a look at something relatively simple. Fuel tanks. Oh, got a lot of fuel tanks in here. Adapter tanks, fuel tank there, RCS tanks, Xeon tanks. these names in here might not equate to the names that you have within KSP. These are internal names known to KSP itself. The directory name itself doesn't actually matter. You can call it ABC123 and the game really won't care. So let's look at a tank. Let's go for the X232, shall we? Actually, no. I just spotted the big orange tank that everybody loves. That's called a Fuel Tank Jumbo 64. Let's go and take a look at it. For each part, you will have several files in here. You'll have the config file, the model file, and then maybe other files which contain textures and other stuff. We're not going to worry about the model file because model editing really is quite complicated. All we're going to be concerned about is the config file. Let's go ahead and open it up. Make this a little bit bigger. Right. The standard coding method for these config files use square brackets. So where you have an open square bracket there, at the bottom you will always have a closed square bracket. So part just tells the game that this is a part config. So in here we have name equals. Well, that's not as simple as it sounds. The name equals here is its internal name to KSP, not what you would see while playing the game. Module equals. Module equals tells the game what it is, more about what it is. In this case, it's a part. Author equals, I'm not quite sure whether that is actually used within the game. I don't believe so. But even so, best leave it in. Mesh equals. Now this gets the fun bit. The config file loads the part model, and that's what this bit does. Now you might not have a mesh equals, you might have a model equals. There is basically two ways of doing it within KSP. The mesh equals is the older method, the original one. Model equals is the newer type. Now with mesh equals, you can basically just give it a model name in the same directory, whereas with model equals, you actually have to specify where it is in the directory, which can get a little bit complicated. So we're going to come back to that. Then we have rescale factor. If you want a bigger part, that's the bit that you need to look at. Rescale factor is 1. Well, this is an orange tank. I think it's 2.5 meter. If you wanted to make it 3.75, that's the bit that you want. If you want to make it 5 meter, that's the bit that you want. Node stack and node attach, we're going to come back to them. There are guides already out there, but they can get quite complicated. But again, all of the syntax in here is the setting value itself and then an equal all the way down. Tech required. Now for those of you that are playing KSP career mode, that are unlocking the tech tree, that's the bit that tells it what tech is required before this part is unlocked. So if you wanted to modify a part so it comes up earlier in the tech tree, that's the value that you're looking for. Entry cost. That is the cost of buying the part. Sort of. There's two values there. Cost equals. Which way around are they? I've got to remember myself now. Entry cost is the newer one, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, for unlocking the part itself, and cost equals is the cost to actually buy it in the VAB, or the space plane hangar. That's of course if you're playing career mode. Right. Category, fuel tank. As you can see, if we shift over here on the screen cap, you've got all your categories on the left there. This bit tells it which category to put it in. So of course you can change that. Subcategory, I believe, still aren't being used, even though subcategories have been introduced into the game. Title. Now this is the bit that you see within the game itself. Rocket Max Jumbo 64 fuel tank. Again, same syntax that we've been seeing all along. Right, so everything after that, that's what gets displayed. Shift this over again. When you hover over these icons. Manufacturer, again, it gets displayed. Has no other purpose within the game but that little window when you hover over your parts. Description, same again. Attach rules. Well, we're going to come back to that as well in a future episode. We're just going through the configs so they're not completely alien to you. But those rules indicate, or basically tell the game, how you're allowed to attach this part to others and other parts to it. So we're going to come back to that. Mass. Well, strangely enough, that's the mass of the part. And the value here is in tons. So if you really wanted to cheat, you could set that to 0. I wouldn't recommend setting it to negative numbers. I'm not sure if KSP actually has any filtering for that. You may get some rather funky effects and crashes and whatnot. So leave it above 0 for the time being. Drag model type, we're gonna ignore. Right? Leave that at whatever the original is. If you're writing a config from scratch, I will talk you through the drag model types further down the line when we get to that level of complexity. Maximum drag, minimum drag. Pretty much want to leave these at 0.2, 0.3, that sort of range. They are a rescaler for the drag model, the aerodynamic model, within KSP itself. Right? Most of you will be leaving these values alone anyway. I'm pretty sure some of you will have already changed the mass to 0, just to have a little bit of fun. Angular drag, again, that value affects the drag model and the aerodynamics model. So whatever the default value is that it comes with, leave it as that for the time being. Crash tolerance. This is a nice little config, very easy to understand. If you land your rocket, let's say you land belly first on the Mun by accident, this setting here Oops, one. Actually tells the game what the part can actually tolerate in terms of landing speed with something solid. In this case, the value is 6, which is 6 meters per second. You can, of course, increase it or decrease it to make the tolerance higher or lower. So you can set it to 60 meters per second or 6,000 meters per second, and so on and so forth. Braking force and braking torque we're going to come back to at a later date. Those two values actually set the stresses on the joints of the part and how much they can take. So let's leave them alone and come back to it because it's complicated. Max temp. This config value, with the exception of engines, doesn't do anything in stock parts at the moment, unless they change something in 0.9 that I'm not aware of. If you're using deadly re-entry, that value is used. So just be aware of that. I would suggest for absolute beginners leaving that at somewhere close to 3000 time being, unless it's an engine. Even if it's an engine, set it higher. Then nothing bad will happen. You won't get any weird effects. Now, in this config file, we come to the bit that will interest most of you: the resources. Again, still within the parts definition brackets. These ones here, the outside ones. Excuse me. These are the resources that the part itself carries. So we've got a tag there that says resource, and these two open and close square brackets. So these three configs in here actually tell it what resources it's going to carry and how much it can carry. So on the great big orange tank, one of the resources that it can carry is liquid fuel. The amount is what it gets loaded with by default, and the max amount is the maximum you can fill it up to. So I'm sure some of you will be looking forward to creating a Jumbo 64 tank with even more fuel on. Second resource definition here. This one's for oxidizer. Now you will notice that the amounts and max amounts between liquid fuel and oxidizer are different. That is because most of the engines within KSP actually use liquid fuel and oxidizer at different rates to each other. Liquid fuel is 0.9, oxidizer is 1.1. So with those two ratios, you can very easily sort of work out how much, excuse me, you can work out how much of each is actually going to be used and how much is going to be needed. So, with what I've just told you about this part config, how do we then edit it? Well, it is self-explanatory. Just click at the end, delete the value and put your own in. However, what I do recommend is not editing the original config file. What we're going to do is get rid of it without saving, and we're going to copy the config file, and then we're going to paste it, and there we have another one. So we're going to give it a reasonable name. Spaces within file names are bad, and directories. Don't do them. You can get into all sorts of trouble with part configs if you use a space in the file name. Same goes for symbols such as forward slashes, backslashes, hashes, ats, stuff like that. Don't use them. And that goes for Linux users as well. So keep it simple. Dashes and underscores are okay, and that's all you should be using. So for this one, we're going to call it dash how to mod, so that we know this is the one that we've been modifying. Now we can go ahead and open it up, and this is our part. Excuse me again. Right, when you're duplicating a part, you need to change its names. Otherwise it can get very confusing, and KSP might not be too happy with having two different parts with the same name. So where it says here name equals, that's its internal name. So go ahead and put a dash and put how to mod HTM. That now distinguishes this part as being completely different to any other part that's in there. Rescale factor. Well, let's go and have a little bit of an experiment, shall we? What does the rescale factor actually do? How does it affect KSP? Well, most of the configs you can change, and it won't cause a problem in the VAB. You know what? We're going to change this from 1. Let's make a 5-meter fuel tank, shall we? Let's go and change that to 2. We're going to leave everything else the same. Title. I'm going to change that. I'm going to put HTM fuel tank, so that we know which one it is. Manufacturer. Here's your chance to be famous. Let's go change the manufacturer to CW Tech. You can change it to whatever you want. Use your own name. Use something funny. Description. You know all those witty descriptions within KSP? Go right ahead. Again, use commas, yes. No slashes, no symbols. And just have some fun with it. Everything else, for the time being, let's leave it alone. So we're going to save that and close. Well, guess what we're going to do now? We're going to jump into KSP. Now just give me a moment for me to start the stock KSP. Oh yeah, I just realised I need to get rid of Firefox. It might actually load KSP. There we go. Right. I'm going to switch the screen over to KSP, hopefully. And voila. So waiting for KSP to load. You know, never realised that KSP would take this long with OBS installed. Oh, look here. Don't know quite what it is, but Windows has allocated a huge chunk of my RAM to basically caching the hard drive. That I don't understand. But anyway, we now finally have KSP open, so let's go and start a game. I don't have any saved games, so let's make a new one. Sandbox. Now, you know that file that we created, how to mod? That's the one. If you haven't done anything with it, you can do whatever you want to it in your own time. If you know how to do any graphics programs. Plenty of instructions out there. You can even use Microsoft Paint. We're going to select that flag. It's just a blank white flag. I might do something in the meantime before the next episode. And then we're going to start. Welcome to the Space Center. Yes, you can go away now. And we're going to go into the VAB. Go away. And we're going to go into fuel tanks. And somewhere in here, there we go, 2 jumbo fuel tanks. That's the original. That's the how to mod jumbo fuel tank. And it's massive. We like big parts. Oh, that's the original. It's huge. We've created a monster. Now, of course, when you right click on it, it still has the same fuel amounts that this one has, because we haven't changed that in the config yet. Now, one thing to point out, if you change the config or any of the configs, you have to come out of KSP and go back into it. You have to reload it. Basically, when you start KSP, all of the configs, all of the models, all of the textures get loaded into memory from the hard drive. It doesn't keep re-referencing the files that are on your hard drive. When you change the file on your hard drive, the KSP that you have running will not know about the change. So you have to come out of it and go back into it. Yes, this gets really annoying. So we're going to leave that up at the moment. And I'm going to chuck you back to the config. So there's our Jumbo 64. We're going to open it up. Now we're going to scroll to the bottom, and this is where our resources are. So our rescale factor is 2. Now that's in all 3 dimensions. X, Y, Z. It probably goes beyond beginner capabilities, but simply timesing these values by 2, right, isn't actually the volume increase within the tank itself. However, that gets difficult, and using Pythagoras, using pi to recalculate the internal volume, that's going to get difficult. But basically, just times it by 3. I think it'll get you pretty close. 2880 times 3. 8640. So we're going to change that. 8640. And then we're going to change that one as well. Make sure that the max amount is always above the amount that's currently loaded. Otherwise, you might find a few interesting things start happening. Or, I should say, not interesting things. So same again, 3520 times 3. And then we go ahead and put that value in. 10560. 10560. And hey presto, you've just modified what resources are available in that tank. So we're going to save that. And we're going to close. Now, just to illustrate the point I was making, in KSP, rid of them. There's the Jumbo 64 fuel tank, and those values haven't updated because we haven't started KSP, restarted KSP. So let's go ahead and do that now. Shut you over to the right monitor while we shut it down. Down, and then let's go ahead and start it back up again. Hopefully it'll load a little bit faster this time. Hopefully. Come on. There we go. Now, as you can see while it's loading, you can look at your own copy as well. Across the bottom, where it's got the witty loading hints, you can see it loading all manner of files. One of which of those files, which you might not actually see, will be your own parts that you've created. Yep. Lots of space tape needs untangling for my rockets. Testing springs, really? Oh well, my favourite witty loading hint isn't on there. So, we're going back in here, start, resume, because we've already created one. Go back and find the fuel tank. Here's that one. Zoom out a bit. There's the original. So the original had 2880 for liquid fuel, and this one now has the updated value of 8540. As you can see, that's pretty darn close to a 5-meter tank. If we go and find the new 3.75 meter engine clusters, which apparently people think are too big and too powerful, they also don't fit. So this tank is bigger than the 3.75 meter parts. So there you go, you've just created a really huge massive tank. Now that wasn't that difficult. Pretty much straightforward. Now just be careful how much bigger you go. Simple reason being that you can create a part that does not fit inside the VAB. Where is the Mark 1 command pod? Yeah. It gets dwarfed by your new tank. Nice, shiny, orange tank. Now, probably in the next episode, next week, liquid fuel and oxidizer are not the only resources we can add to parts. So next time round, we're going to look at adding in another type of resource. Can you think of any that might be useful? Like, monoprop for the RCS. Yep, you can add that in as well on the orange tank. How about, go in here, around here. Would you like your orange tank to contain a battery as well? Yep, we can add them in too. What else can we add? Is there anything that we can easily add? I think that's pretty much about it. Everything else requires quite a lot of understanding. Adding additional resources to a part is actually quite simple and straightforward. So, next week I'm going to be showing you how to add a new resource to a part. So you can go and modify your parts to contain resources. Now that also includes things like these small delta wings. Well, we all know that real life planes have fuel tanks in their wings, so why don't these? Why don't they have a small fuel tank in? Well, I'm going to be showing you how to add small fuel tanks into parts that don't normally have fuel tanks on. So things like that one, swept wing type B. Oh, it's pretty big. I'm sure you can fit 100, 200, 300 units in there physically. But nope, no tank. So next time I'm going to show you how to do it. And it's very, very simple. It's as simple as copy and paste. Literally. So, following my guides, you will learn how to do it. So, anything else? What can I show you next time? Well, we've made a fuel tank bigger. And we're going to be adding fuel tanks to wings. Would you like some bigger wings as well? Well, next time around, when we're editing the configs for a wing, you will also see how to modify that wing so that it's twice as big. So you get a nice big wing to go with your big fuel tank. Yes, we like big things. What was that I hear you say? What about the engines? Well, that's a little bit more complicated. Yes, I know you want bigger engines. However, there's a lot more maths to be done with an engine. It's not just a simple case of altering the rescale factor. Now, the rescale factor will make the part model itself bigger, but it won't do anything for your thrust settings within the engine. So, rescaling an engine, we're going to come back to that one. Once you guys have gotten used to editing these configs, then I'm going to show you how to edit the engine parts so that basically you get nice big engines. And of course, with the knowledge of how to make big engines comes the knowledge of how to insanely cheat. Yes, making an engine with 1 billion kilonewtons of thrust that doesn't use any fuel is entirely possible. But none of you will want to cheat at all, will you? How about next time, you know, these nice wonderful modular girder segments, you know, they look a bit small as well compared to our tank. So we can go ahead and make some bigger ones. And you know, I've just realised as well. We need to do something about the stacked separators. I mean, 3.75 just isn't big enough. Oh, actually, that's a 2.5, isn't it? Oh. You know, it might work for that one, but if you stick 2 5-meter tanks on, it's just going to look really, really weird. So, next time round, we're going to resize one of them as well. How about radial decouplers? Yep, they look small as well. We're going to make them bigger. What else is there? Oh, that's the... don't want to do that. That's the 3.75 meter decoupler. See, just not big enough. We want bigger. So, oh yes. Next time around, we'll be making a load of parts a lot bigger. As well as how to add resources to a part that doesn't normally have resources, and how to add additional resources to parts that already have resources but not the one that you want. So how to swap them around. So switch you back to the configs. There we have the original and the one that we've just made 5 meters. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I will be back every Wednesday 7 PM till 8 PM GMT. For those in America, depending on your time zone, that's between I think of all the time zones here, about 10 o'clock in the morning to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on whether you are east or west. Also, Twitch will be saving these videos, so feel free to watch them afterwards. And provided this file isn't too big, I'm going to upload it onto YouTube. But in all likelihood, it's going to be massive. Right, I'm CW. Today we made something really big. Not the biggest that we could, but we don't want to go too big. Let's start with baby steps. Yes, we'll leave retexturing for later on in the series. I'm CW, and feel free to crash hard. Bye for now.